The conference room felt like a cage. I sat across from Brenda Walsh, our HR director, and my supervisor, Marcus Grant. The morning light coming through the windows seemed too bright, almost mocking. Brenda slid a stack of papers across the polished table, each one showing screenshots of my computer screen. Patent filing documents. My patent filing documents. She folded her hands and looked at me with cold satisfaction. We have evidence you've been developing a competing product during company time, she said. Marcus wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the table, jaw tight. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just sat there, knowing something they didn't. The termination took 12 minutes from start to finish. Badge, laptop, building access card. All surrendered to Brenda's outstretched hand. A security guard waited outside the glass door, radio crackling on his belt. I had 20 minutes to box up my desk while everyone watched. The walk to my car felt endless, that cardboard box growing heavier with each step. But as I drove out of the parking lot for the last time, I allowed myself the smallest smile. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. 9 months earlier, none of this seemed possible. I'd been so excited when Marcus offered me the position at Tech Vision Solutions. After 2 years bouncing between startups that ran out of funding, a stable, mid-sized company felt like salvation. 200 employees, steady revenue, actual benefits. I was employee number 47 in their engineering department. Tech Vision specialized in data encryption for healthcare systems, which meant our work actually mattered. Hospitals, clinics, insurance companies, they all needed to protect patient data. I'd graduated from University of Texas at Austin with my computer science degree and $38,000 in student loans. This job paid $65,000 a year, which seemed like real money until Austin rent took its bite. My one-bedroom apartment cost $1,800 monthly. The first 6 months were everything I'd hoped for. Our team of 8 engineers worked on MediSecure, the company's flagship product. The environment felt collaborative, creative. I contributed 3 major optimizations to their core encryption algorithm, increasing processing speed by 35%. Marcus praised my work in company meetings. I got a $5,000 bonus. For the first time since graduation, I felt like I'd found my place. Then came month 7. Marcus called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. "We're starting something special," he said, closing the door behind me. "Project Titan. Next generation architecture. I want you on the core team." Only 3 of us got access. Me, Marcus, and Daniel Cooper, our lead architect. The secrecy felt exciting at first. We were building something revolutionary, or so I thought. They gave me access to the company's most sensitive code repositories, architecture documents, everything. Over the next 3 months, I threw myself into Project Titan. Late nights at the office, weekends reviewing specifications. But somewhere around week 8, something started bothering me. A function here, an algorithm there. They looked familiar, not from our previous work, but from elsewhere. I started digging quietly, comparing our code against open-source repositories. My stomach sank when I found the matches. Daniel had copied significant portions from projects with attribution requirements we weren't meeting. Worse, had incorporated patented algorithms from competitors. License violations everywhere, patent infringement in multiple places. I documented everything in a personal notebook, taking screenshots on my phone. At first, I thought it might be an oversight. Easy mistake to make under pressure, so I brought it up with Marcus during our next one-on-one meeting. "I found some potential licensing issues in the Titan codebase," I said carefully. "Some algorithms that might need attribution or licensing agreements." Marcus barely looked up from his laptop. "This is how the industry works, Dominique." Our legal team reviewed everything. "I haven't seen any legal reviews in the project documentation." His tone cooled noticeably. "Focus on implementation. That's your job. Legal compliance is above your pay grade." The dismissal stung, but something in his voice bothered me more. Not defensiveness exactly, but a calculated indifference, like Head expected this question and prepared his answer. I went back to my desk feeling uneasy. The excitement of working on something special had curdled into something darker. But I needed this job. I had asthma, needed the health insurance. My inhaler cost $260 without coverage. Student loans took $450 from every paycheck. Car payment another $320. I was living paycheck to paycheck in an expensive city, so I kept working on Project Titan, but I also kept documenting the violations I found, not planning anything specific, just protecting myself, covering my bases. Then one night, everything changed. It was past 9 p.m. Office mostly empty. I was finishing up a code review when I needed to reference an old architectural diagram. I opened the shared drive, navigating to the folder where we kept project documents. But I must have clicked wrong, because suddenly I was looking at a folder I'd never seen before. Finance and Legal, labeled Executive Only. I should have closed it, should have navigated away. But the folder was already open, and one file name caught my eye. Acquisition Timeline Final. My hand moved to the mouse almost on its own. Double-click, the document opened. Email chain between Marcus and Trevor Lawson, our CEO. The timestamps went back 6 months, right before Project Titan started. I read the first email. Then the second. By the third, my hands were shaking. They were planning to sell the company. Had been planning it for months. The entire Project Titan initiative existed to inflate TechVision's valuation. Make the technology look more impressive, more cutting edge, the patent violations, the stolen code. They knew about all of it. One email from Trevor made everything crystal clear. We need Titan demo ready by June. Once Milestone signs the letter of intent, we push for fast close. Well, be long gone with our payout before this house of cards falls. The new owners can deal with any IP issues that surface. I sat frozen in my chair, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. They were committing fraud, building a product they knew had massive legal liability, planning to sell it to unsuspecting investors before the truth came out. And they were using me, using my work, to make it happen. The betrayal hit like a physical weight on my chest. Marcus had recruited me personally, told me he saw potential in me, put me on his special project. And the whole time, I was just a tool to build their fraudulent product. I closed the document carefully, cleared my browser history, shut down my computer. The drive home felt surreal. Austin traffic passed in a blur. When I got to my apartment, I sat on my couch in the dark for 2 hours, just thinking. By midnight, I'd made my decision. I couldn't just quit. Couldn't just walk away. They'd complete their fraud, pocket millions, and I'd be complicit by silence. But reporting them internally meant they'd fire me, and I'd lose everything, with no recourse. I needed protection. I needed leverage. I needed a plan. That weekend, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that email. House of Cards. They'd said it so casually, like fraud was just business strategy. By Sunday morning, I'd researched employment law until my eyes burned. My employment contract sat on my kitchen table. I'd read it when I signed, but now I studied every clause. Section 4.2 covered intellectual property. Company owns all inventions conceived or developed within the scope of employment. Within the scope of employment. That phrase mattered more than I'd realized. Project Titan was built on stolen code. Could TechVision legally claim ownership of something fundamentally based on infringement? More importantly, if I developed my own clean implementation, completely separate from their stolen code, on my own time and equipment, would my contract even apply? I spent $800 I didn't have on a consultation with a patent attorney. $800 that should have gone to my student loans, charged to a credit card that was already carrying a balance. The attorney's name was Harold Chen, recommended through an online legal forum. His office was in a strip mall in Round Rock, small but professional. I explained my situation carefully, leaving out names and specific details. So, hypothetically, I said, if someone developed technology at home, on their own time and equipment, that happened to solve the same problem as their employer's product, but using completely different methods, would the employer own it? Harold leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Depends on the employment agreement language. You said yours specifies within scope of employment. Yes. That's narrower than some agreements. If you can prove independent development, separate from company resources, you might have an argument for separate ownership, especially if the company's version has legal problems. My heart beat faster. What kind of legal problems? Patent infringement? License violations? Anything that makes their IP claim questionable. Courts look at clean hands. If they built something on stolen code, claiming they own your independent work becomes harder. I left that meeting with my mind racing. It was possible. Risky, maybe illegal in ways I didn't understand yet, but possible. For the next 2 months, I lived a double life. By day, I worked on Project Titan at TechVision, implementing their stolen algorithms. By night and on weekends, I worked at home on my personal laptop, developing my own solution. Clean room implementation, they call it in the industry. I couldn't look at TechVision's code while working on my version, couldn't reference their documentation. Everything had to come from first principles, from published research papers, from my own knowledge of encryption theory. It was exhausting. I'd work my normal 45 hours at TechVision, then come home and code for another 20 hours across the weekend. My sister Emma called from Houston, worried because I kept canceling our usual video chats. You sound tired, Dom. Are you eating? I'm fine, just busy with work. Work shouldn't consume your whole life. If only she knew. Work was consuming my life, but not the work, she thought. The patent application took shape slowly. I documented everything obsessively. Timestamps showing when I worked, where I worked, what resources I used. Every line of code written on my personal laptop, saved to my personal cloud storage. Every research paper I referenced came from public sources ID purchased or accessed through the public library's database subscriptions. I called my implementation Sentinel, though naming it felt presumptuous. It did essentially what TechVision's system did: quantum-resistant encryption for healthcare data transmission. But my approach was fundamentally different. Where they'd stolen patented algorithms, I'd developed new mathematical proofs. Where they'd copied code, I'd written everything from scratch. The provisional patent application cost $3,000. $3,000 I absolutely didn't have. It went on my credit card, pushing my balance to $7,000. The minimum payment alone was $140 monthly. But I filed it. Novel method for quantum-resistant healthcare data encryption. Inventor: Dominique Patterson. That was my real last name, Patterson. Seeing it on the patent application felt surreal. This document might protect me or destroy me. I wasn't sure which. The filing date was March 15th, 4 months before the day I'd get fired. 5 months before the investor deal would fall apart. I submitted it electronically at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, sitting at my kitchen table with cold coffee and sweaty palms. Patent applications become public after 18 months unless you request otherwise. I requested immediate publication. Let it be searchable. Let anyone who looked for similar technology find it. I wanted the timestamp, the public record that I'd filed first. Then I went back to working at TechVision like nothing had changed. Marcus started acting different around week 3. Nothing obvious, just small things. He'd watch me at my desk sometimes, like he was trying to figure something out. In meetings, he'd ask probing questions. What do you work on at home, Dominique? Any side projects? Just unwinding mostly. Streaming shows. Normal stuff. No coding, not if I can help it. I stare at code all day here. Head nod. But something in his eyes suggested he didn't believe me. Then Daniel Cooper quit. Just came in one Monday, had a meeting with Trevor and Marcus, and by Wednesday, he was gone. Rumor around the office said a competitor had hired him for twice his salary. But I wondered if Head sensed the legal trouble brewing. Decided to get out before it exploded. They brought in Jennifer Hayes as the new lead architect. She was sharp, mid-40s, with 15 years of experience at major tech companies. Within a week, she'd reviewed the Titan codebase. I saw her expression change as she dug deeper. Saw her have an urgent meeting with Trevor. The atmosphere at TechVision shifted. Layoff rumors started circulating. The ping-pong table in the break room sat unused. People whispered in clusters, fell silent when management walked past. I kept my head down, kept working, kept waiting, Then one evening in late July, an email notification appeared on my phone. Patent Office. My heart stopped. I opened it with shaking hands, standing in the produce section of Whole Foods. Patent publication notice. My provisional patent had been published. It was now public record, searchable in the USPTO database. Anyone doing patent research on encryption technology would find it. Anyone, including TechVision's lawyers, doing due diligence for their pending sale. I stood there holding a bag of apples, people flowing around me, and realized the clock had started ticking. They'd find out, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, but they'd find out. Part of me wanted to quit right then. Walk away before the confrontation, but I needed the health insurance. Needed the paycheck. I was barely surviving financially as it was, so I went to work the next morning like always, swiped my badge, rode the elevator to the third floor, sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The email from HR arrived at 9:47 a.m. Subject line, mandatory meeting, 10 a.m. today. Conference room B. My stomach dropped. This was it. I had 13 minutes to prepare for whatever was coming. 13 minutes to decide what it'd say, how it'd respond, whether it'd fight or fold. I spent 12 of those minutes in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to slow my racing heart. Then I walked to conference room B, and my life changed forever. The screenshots were already laid out on the table when I entered. Brenda Walsh sat on one side, Marcus on the other. The images showed patent filing documents open on a computer screen. My patent filing documents. But something was wrong with them. The timestamps. They showed daytime hours, 1:15 p.m., 3:42 p.m., times when I should have been at work. I'd never opened those documents during work hours. Every single time I'd accessed my patent files, I'd been at home, evenings or weekends. These timestamps were impossible. Sit down, Dominique. Brenda's voice had the warmth of a parking meter. I sat. My hands wanted to shake, so I pressed them flat on the table. We've been monitoring some concerning activity, Brenda continued. She tapped the first screenshot. These images show you working on a patent application during company time, using company resources. This constitutes theft of company intellectual property and violates Section 4.2 of your employment agreement. Those timestamps are wrong, I said quietly. I only worked on that at home. We have evidence to the contrary. She pushed the stack toward me. Multiple instances over several months. Screenshots captured from remote monitoring of your workstation. That was a lie. They couldn't remotely capture screenshots of my personal laptop, and I'd never accessed those files on my work computer. Not once. These images were fabricated. But saying that would mean accusing them of creating false evidence, which would make everything worse. Marcus finally looked at me. I'm disappointed, Dominique. I brought you onto Project Titan. I trusted you. The hypocrisy hit like a slap. He trusted me, while planning to commit fraud and leave me holding part of the liability. The patent is my own work, I said, keeping my voice level. Developed independently at home on my own equipment. That's not what the evidence shows. Brenda opened a folder, pulled out my employment contract. Section 4.2 is clear. All inventions related to the company's business, developed during your employment period, belong to TechVision Solutions. I used only public research and my own knowledge. You had access to our proprietary codebase. You cannot prove you didn't use company IP in your work. The trap was elegant, I had to admit. They'd fabricated evidence, claimed my independent work violated my contract, and were using my access to their stolen code against me. This is effective immediately, Brenda said. Your employment is terminated for cause. You'll receive your final paycheck for hours worked this period, but no severance. You're not eligible for unemployment benefits due to the cause designation. The words hit like stones. For cause, that meant no safety net, no buffer while I looked for another job. You need to surrender your badge, laptop, and building access immediately. My company laptop sat on the table. I slid it across to her. The badge came off my lanyard, building access card from my wallet. You have 20 minutes to clear your personal items from your desk. Security will escort you. The security guard's name was Thomas, had always been friendly, asking about my weekend plans when I worked late. Now he wouldn't meet my eyes as he followed me to my cubicle. 20 minutes to box up 18 months of my life. Photos in frames, a spare sweater, a coffee mug Emma gave me for my birthday. Office supplies I'd bought myself because the company ones ran out. Sarah Martinez appeared at my cubicle wall. Dom, what happened? They fired me. My voice came out steadier than I felt. What? Why? It's complicated. This is wrong. You're one of the best engineers here. I couldn't explain. Couldn't tell her about the patent, the fraud, any of it. Thanks, Sarah. Take care of yourself. The walk through the office was endless. Everyone staring or pretending not to stare. My cardboard box growing heavier. Thomas 3 steps behind me, radio crackling. Out the door, across the parking lot. Into my car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. I sat there with the engine running, AC blasting, trying to process what had just happened. No job. No income. No health insurance. Bills due in 2 weeks. $4,300 in my checking account. Rent. $1,800. Student loans. $450. Car payment. $320. Credit card minimum payment. $140. Utilities, groceries, gas. 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I rationed everything. Then it'd be broke. My phone buzzed. Email notification. From Patricia Drummond, Senior Partner, Rothwell and Associates. Subject: regarding patent application US 20240 XXXXX. My breath caught. I opened the email with trembling hands. Dear Miss Patterson, I represent Milestone Ventures, the primary investor in TechVision Solutions. During our due diligence review of a proposed acquisition, we discovered your recently published patent application. The technology appears substantially similar to TechVision's core product offering. We would like to schedule a call with you this week to discuss the relationship between your patent and TechVision's intellectual property. Please respond at your earliest convenience. I read it 3 times. Then it clicked. The investors didn't know. They were doing their due diligence for the $80 million acquisition, found my patent in their search, and realized there might be an IP conflict. TechVision had just fired me to silence me before I could talk to the investors. They'd tried to bury me, discredit me, make it look like I was a disgruntled employee with false claims. But they'd moved too fast. The investors were already asking questions. I had leverage. Maybe. Or I was unemployed with bills due and no prospects. My hands stopped shaking. I forwarded Patricia Drummond's email to my personal account, backed up everything to 3 different cloud services, and started drafting my response. If they wanted to fight dirty, it'd show them what real fighting looked like. 3 days of unemployment felt like 3 years. I applied to 42 jobs online. No responses yet. I updated my LinkedIn profile, trying to explain my departure from TechVision without sounding bitter or desperate. Pursuing new opportunities in cybersecurity and data protection. Sarah texted, "Coffee soon? Want to hear what happened?" I put her off. Couldn't explain yet. Didn't want to put her in an awkward position. My bank balance dropped to $4,050 after paying minimum bills. Student loan payment cleared. Credit card minimum. Internet, because I needed it for job searching. I skipped groceries, ate pasta, and canned beans from my pantry. My inhaler sat on my bathroom counter, 1/3 full. I rationed it carefully, even though my chest felt tight with stress. The new one would cost $260 without insurance. I didn't have $260. The video call with Milestone Ventures was scheduled for Thursday, 10 a.m. I'd spent 2 days preparing, organized all my documentation, timeline showing when and where I'd developed every piece of my patent, personal laptop activity logs, research papers I'd referenced, every piece of evidence that proved independent development. I set up my kitchen table for the call, cleaned the area behind me so the background looked professional, put on a nice blouse, kept my hair simple, tested my camera and microphone 3 times. At 9:55, I logged into the video conference link Patricia Drummond had sent. 3 faces appeared on screen at exactly 10 a.m. Patricia Drummond looked like a lawyer from Central Casting. Sharp gray suit, penetrating gray eyes, around 60 years old, the kind of person who missed nothing. James Rothwell looked younger, maybe mid-30s, conservative tie, taking notes on a legal pad even before anyone spoke. Angela Torres had a confident energy, mid-40s, direct gaze. Thank you for joining us, Dominique. We appreciate your time. Of course. How can I help? Patricia took the lead. We're conducting due diligence on TechVision Solutions for a proposed acquisition. Your patent application came up in our intellectual property search. We need to understand if there's a potential conflict with TechVision's technology. Id rehearsed this part. I worked at TechVision until last week. I was part of the engineering team that developed their encryption technology, but the patent I filed is based on independent work I did at home, on my own time, using only my personal equipment. Can you walk us through your development process? James asked. I shared my screen, showed them my documentation. I started in May. Every session was at home, evenings and weekends. I used only my personal laptop. I pulled up activity logs, showed timestamps. Here is my file creation history. Everything between 6 p.m. and midnight on weekdays, or during weekend hours. Nothing during my work schedule. Patricia leaned closer to her camera. Why did you develop this independently? This was the moment. Tell the truth or hedge? I decided on truth. I discovered problems with TechVision's codebase, license violations, patent infringements from other companies. I documented them and reported to my supervisor. He dismissed my concerns. When I realized they were moving forward anyway, I wanted to create a clean implementation that didn't have those legal issues. Silence on the call. The 3 lawyers looked at each other. What kind of violations? Angela asked. Copied code from open-source projects without proper attribution. Patented algorithms from competitors used without licensing. Significant portions of their core technology have legal problems. More silence. Do you have documentation of these violations? Patricia's voice had shifted. Still professional, but with an edge. Yes. Screenshots comparing their code to the original sources. License agreements they're violating. Patent numbers for algorithms they're infringing. James stopped taking notes. Why are you telling us this? Because you're about to pay $80 million for a company with massive IP liability. I thought you should know what you're buying. Patricia removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose. Dominique, you said you worked there until last week. Can you clarify your departure? Here it comes. TechVision fired me 3 days ago. They claimed I violated my employment agreement by working on my patent. They said I stole company trade secrets. Did you steal company trade secrets? Angela's question was direct. No. Everything in my patent is original work, independently developed, but they found out about my patent and terminated me immediately. For cause, which means no severance or unemployment benefits. Patricia's jaw tightened slightly. Do you have documentation of your termination? I shared the termination letter. Then the screenshots Brenda had used as evidence. These are what they claimed showed me working during company time. But look at the timestamps. I never accessed my patent files during work hours. These images are fabricated. I showed my laptop activity logs next to their screenshots. The times didn't match. My files were never open when their screenshots claimed they were. James leaned back in his chair. They falsified evidence to terminate you. That's my assessment. How long had you worked there? 18 months. It just hit the vesting cliff for my stock options this month. The lawyers exchanged glances again. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Patricia replaced her glasses. Dominique, I need to ask you something directly. And I need you to be completely honest. During your time at TechVision, did you personally observe specific instances of license violations or patent infringements in their codebase? My heart pounded. This was it. The point of no return. Yes, I documented everything. Can you provide us with this documentation? I can, but I need to understand something first. What happens if I share this with you? Well, review it as part of our due diligence. If we find evidence of significant IP problems, well, likely halt the acquisition pending further investigation. What about Tech Vision? What happens to them? That depends on what we find. At minimum, the deal is delayed or restructured. At maximum, we walk away entirely. They may face legal consequences depending on the severity. I thought about Sarah, about the other engineers who'd done nothing wrong. What about the employees? Patricia's expression softened slightly. That's not something we can control. But if a company is built on fraudulent IP, those employees are better off knowing sooner rather than later. She was right. I knew she was right. But it still felt like I was about to blow up people's lives. Dominique, Angela prompted gently, this is your decision. No pressure from us. But there was pressure. Pressure from the right thing to do, from the fraud it discovered, from the way they'd fired me and tried to discredit me. I'll send you everything I have. The relief on Patricia's face was visible. Thank you. Email it to the address on my card. Well, review it immediately. I started compiling files to send while still on the call. Code comparisons, license agreements, patent numbers, the damning email chain between Marcus and Trevor about the House of Cards. Dominique, Patricia said as I worked. One more thing. After we review this material, we may need you to testify or provide deposition if this leads to litigation. Would you be willing? Testifying meant going public, meant being named in legal documents, meant Tech Vision would come after me with everything. But what choice did I have? They'd already fired me, already tried to discredit me. Yes, I'll testify. Good. Well, be in touch soon. And Dominique, you should consult with an employment attorney about your termination. What you're describing sounds like retaliation. The call ended. I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the email I was about to send. Gigabytes of documentation, evidence that would probably destroy Tech Vision. My finger hovered over the send button. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Dominique Patterson. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes, this is Patricia Drummond. I'm calling from my personal line. The video call just ended, but I wanted to speak with you privately. My pulse quickened. Okay. We've just pulled some additional records on Tech Vision. The situation is worse than we thought. Trevor Lawson and Marcus Grant have been pressuring us to accelerate the closing timeline. They moved it up from next month to this Friday. 3 days from now. Why would they do that? Our assessment? They're trying to complete the sale before we finish due diligence. Before anyone discovers exactly what you just told us. Your patent publication spooked them. They're trying to close before we dig deeper. What does that mean? It means we need your evidence immediately. Tonight, if possible. We're invoking our right to extend due diligence, but they're threatening to sue us for breach of the purchase agreement. Your documentation will determine whether we proceed or walk away. I looked at the drafted email, ready to send. I'll send it now. Thank you. One more thing. Have you spoken to an employment attorney yet? I can't afford one. I'd like to refer you to someone. His name is Douglas Brennan. He specializes in wrongful termination cases. Tell him I sent you. He works on contingency for cases like yours. She gave me his number. Call him tomorrow. What Tech Vision did to you, the timing with your patent, the fabricated evidence, that's actionable retaliation. You may have a very strong case. Okay, thank you. No, Dominique, thank you. You may have just saved us from making a catastrophic investment. The call ended. I sent the email to Patricia with all my documentation. Then I sat back and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My phone buzzed immediately. Text from an unknown number. You've destroyed this company. People will lose their jobs because of you. It was from Marcus. My hands shook as I read it. He was blaming me. After everything he'd done, everything they'd planned, he was trying to make me the villain. I blocked the number and called my sister. Emma. Dom, what's wrong? You sound upset. I think I just ended my career in tech. What happened? I told her everything. The patent, the firing, the investor call, all of it. When I finished, Emma was quiet for a long moment. Dom, you didn't destroy anything. They built a house of cards and you just pointed out it was going to collapse. Better you did it than let them defraud investors for millions. But people are going to lose their jobs. People who work for a fraudulent company were always going to lose their jobs. You just changed the timeline. Now at least there's a chance the company can be salvaged by honest people. I wanted to believe her. I'm scared, I'm unemployed. I'm almost broke. And now, I'm in the middle of a legal battle I didn't want. You didn't start this battle. They did when they decided to commit fraud. You just refused to be their accomplice. We talked for another hour. She offered to send me money, even though she made teacher salary and had her own bills. I told her not yet, but I appreciated it. After we hung up, I researched Douglas Brennan online. Impressive credentials, Harvard Law, 15 years specializing in employment cases, won several major settlements. I called his office first thing Friday morning. Got an appointment for Monday afternoon. That weekend was the longest of my life. No word from Patricia. No responses to my job applications. Bank balance dropping every time I checked. I ate ramen and worried. Monday morning, a news article appeared in the Austin Business Journal. Major tech acquisition in jeopardy over IP dispute. The article didn't name me, but it described the situation. TechVision Solutions' $80 million acquisition by Milestone Ventures had hit unexpected obstacles. Anonymous sources cited concerns about patent conflicts and intellectual property compliance. My phone exploded. Text messages from former colleagues. Sarah, is this about you? What happened? From others I barely knew. Did you cause this? Everyone's freaking out here. Trevor called an all-hands meeting. Hez furious. One message came from Marcus' personal number. A different one than Head texted from before. You've destroyed this company. People will lose jobs because of you. Hope you're proud. The guilt hit hard. Sarah didn't deserve this. The junior engineers in my old team didn't deserve this. They'd done nothing wrong, but they were going to suffer anyway because Trevor and Marcus had built a company on fraud. I turned off my phone and went to Douglas Brennan's office. Douglas Brennan's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower in downtown Austin. The view stretched across Lady Bird Lake, the afternoon sun glittering off the water. His assistant offered me coffee while I waited in the reception area. My hands shook too much to hold the cup steady. Dominique? Come on back. Douglas appeared in the doorway. Salt and pepper hair, calm demeanor, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But his handshake was warm, his smile genuine. His office was impressive without being intimidating. Law degrees on the wall. Framed newspaper articles about cases Head won. Photos of what looked like his family at various landmarks. Patricia Drummond speaks highly of you, he said, gesturing for me to sit. She gave me the overview, but I want to hear everything from you. Start from the beginning. I walked him through the entire story, getting hired at TechVision, working on Project Titan, discovering the stolen code and patent violations, finding the email about fraud, developing my independent patent, the publication, the firing, the fake screenshots, the investor call. All of it. Douglas took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and was quiet for a moment. This is one of the clearest cases of retaliation I've seen in years, he finally said. The timing alone is damning. They fire you within days of discovering your patent, use fabricated evidence, and do it right before their acquisition closes. Any reasonable person can see what happened here. What are my options? 2 paths. We can file a complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission for wrongful termination. That's free, but the remedies are limited. Or we sue directly in federal court. Given the patent component and the interstate commerce element with the investor, federal jurisdiction applies. That's where I'd recommend we go. What kind of damages are we talking about? Lost wages, definitely. You were making what, $65,000? Yes. So we calculate lost earnings. But there's also emotional distress, damage to your professional reputation, and most importantly, punitive damages. The fabricated evidence elevates this significantly. We can argue they acted with malice and reckless disregard for your rights. My throat felt tight. What does that mean in numbers? Honestly, cases like this can settle for 6 figures. If we go to trial and win, potentially more. But trials take time and carry risk. How much time? 18 months to 2 years typically. 2 years. It'd be completely broke in 6 weeks. I can't afford to wait that long. I work on contingency for employment cases. That means I take no upfront fees. If we win or settle, I take 33% of the recovery. If we lose, you owe me nothing. So it costs me nothing to pursue this. Correct. Though you'd be responsible for certain costs if we go to trial, like expert witness fees. But we cross that bridge later. Relief washed over me. At least I could fight without going further into debt. There's something else you should know, Douglas continued. Patricia called me before you arrived. Milestone Ventures has reviewed your documentation. They're pulling out of the acquisition completely. The deal is dead. My stomach lurched. What does that mean? It means your evidence was compelling enough to kill an $80 million transaction. It also means TechVision is likely in serious trouble. Patricia mentioned the SEC might get involved, depending on what else they find. The SEC? Like criminal charges, potentially. Securities fraud is a federal crime. If Trevor and Marcus knowingly tried to sell a company with fraudulent IP to investors, that crosses into criminal territory. Id thought I was just protecting myself. I hadn't realized I might be triggering criminal investigations. How do you feel about that? Douglas asked, watching my face. Honestly? Conflicted. They deserve consequences. But there are innocent people at TechVision who are going to suffer. That's natural. But remember, those people were always going to suffer. If this acquisition had gone through with fraudulent IP, and the truth came out later, the company would have imploded anyway. You just changed the timeline. My sister had said almost the same thing. It helped to hear it from a lawyer. So what happens next? I'll draft and file a complaint in federal court this week. Wrongful termination, retaliation, defamation for the false accusations of theft. Well, seek damages and attorney's fees. TechVision will have to respond within 21 days. Then we enter discovery, where both sides exchange evidence. How long before anything happens? First hearing will probably be in 6 to 8 weeks. But here's something that might help you in the short term. Patricia mentioned Milestone Ventures wants to support your living expenses during this process. I blinked. What? Not payment for testimony? They're careful about that. But support for doing the right thing. They view you as a whistleblower who saved them from a fraudulent investment. They're offering $15,000 as assistance to cover your costs while the legal process plays out. $15,000. 4 months of expenses. Maybe 5 if I was careful. That's allowed. It's in a gray area. But yes, as long as it's not conditioned on specific testimony or outcomes, it's essentially a thank you for bringing problems to their attention. We'd structure it carefully to avoid any appearance of impropriety. I accept. The words came out before I could overthink it. $15,000 was survival. Douglas smiled. I'll coordinate with Patricia. You should see the funds within a week. In the meantime, keep looking for work. Document every application, every rejection. It all goes into damages calculation. One more question. TechVision sued me for $5 million. They filed right after Patricia called them about the acquisition. Douglas' expression darkened. When did this happen? This morning. I got served with papers at my apartment. Let me see them. I pulled the folded documents from my purse. Douglas read through them, his frown deepening. This is a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to intimidate you into silence with an absurd damages claim. $5 million for a patent you developed independently, completely without merit. But what if they win? They won't. This case is so weak it borders on frivolous. And it actually helps us. It's further evidence of retaliation. They're punishing you for talking to their investor. It doesn't feel like it helps. It feels terrifying. I understand. But trust me, this makes our case stronger. Any judge will see this for what it is, intimidation tactics. He walked me to the door, shook my hand again. Dominique, you did the right thing. It doesn't feel like it now, but you're on the right side of this. We're going to fight hard for you. I left his office feeling slightly better but still overwhelmed. My phone had 23 messages. I ignored most of them, but one caught my eye. From Patricia Drummond. Call me when you can. Important update. I called from my car in the parking garage. Dominique, things are moving fast, Patricia said. We've reviewed all your documentation thoroughly. The IP violations are extensive and well documented. We're not just pulling out of the acquisition, we're filing a lawsuit against TechVision for fraudulent inducement. They misrepresented the state of their intellectual property to secure our investment. What does that mean? We've already invested $60 million in earlier funding rounds. We're suing to recover that plus damages, but there's more. We've referred the matter to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Your evidence suggests securities fraud. My head spun. This was spiraling into something much bigger than my wrongful termination. There's something else you need to know, Patricia continued. TechVision just filed their lawsuit against you. We've seen the complaint. $5 million for trade secret theft. My attorney says it's a slap suit. Hess right. But I want you to know Milestone is supporting you. We're going to help cover your legal expenses if needed. You're a whistleblower who exposed fraud. We don't abandon people who do the right thing. Thank you. My voice cracked slightly. Also, 3 other TechVision employees have reached out to us. After news of the acquisition falling through spread, they came forward with their own concerns about the company's practices. You opened the door for others to speak up, who, I can't disclose names yet. But they've corroborated your claims about the codebase violations. And they've added new information about pressure from management to hide problems. This is bigger than anyone realized. After the call ended, I sat in my car for a long time, processing everything. My actions had triggered something massive. Lawsuits, SEC investigation, criminal potential, and I was right in the center of it. When I got home, there was a message on my apartment building's intercom. Delivery requiring signature. I went to the lobby. Legal documents. Again. But these weren't from TechVision. They were from the SEC. Request for voluntary interview. They wanted to talk to me about my knowledge of TechVision's business practices. I called Douglas immediately. They work fast, he said after I read him the letter. This is good, actually. Voluntary interview means you're a witness, not a target. Well, prepare thoroughly before you talk to them, but this strongly suggests they're building a case. Against Trevor and Marcus. Almost certainly. Securities fraud, wire fraud, possibly other charges. If what you documented is accurate, they're looking at serious criminal liability. I thought about Marcus' text. You destroyed this company. No, they destroyed it. I just refused to help them hide it. The next 6 weeks blurred together in a haze of legal proceedings, stress, and slow-burning vindication. Week 1, TechVision's lawsuit against me hit the tech news. Startup sues former employee for $5 million in patent dispute. The comments sections were brutal. Half the people called me a thief, said I deserved to be sued into bankruptcy. The other half pointed out the timing seemed suspicious. My LinkedIn messages filled with both support and vitriol. Some recruiters reached out, saying they respected what I was doing. Others ghosted my job applications the moment they connected me to the controversy. Douglas filed our response and counterclaim. Wrongful termination, retaliation, defamation. We sought $2 million in damages. Going on offense, Douglas called it. We also filed a motion to dismiss TechVision's trade secret claim. Douglas attached my complete documentation showing independent development. Timeline, personal laptop logs, research sources, everything. The motion was 37 pages long. Their case will fall apart in discovery, Douglas predicted. They have no evidence you stole anything because you didn't. Meanwhile, Milestone Ventures made good on their promise. $15,000 appeared in my bank account with a memo line, consulting services. Patricia had structured it as payment for helping them evaluate the TechVision investment. I paid my rent, bought groceries, refilled my inhaler prescription. The relief of financial pressure lifting, even temporarily, was immense. Week 2, news broke that Milestone had filed their own lawsuit against TechVision. Fraudulent inducement, seeking recovery of their $60 million investment plus damages. The business press covered it extensively. Major VC firm alleges fraud in tech startup investment ran in TechCrunch. The article mentioned me obliquely. The dispute apparently stems from patent concerns raised by a former employee. TechVision's stock value, privately held but tracked for investor purposes, collapsed. Company valuation dropped from $80 million to under $20 million almost overnight. Employees started leaving. Sarah texted me. Half the engineering team is interviewing elsewhere. Trevor called an all-hands meeting yesterday. It was a disaster. He blamed you by name. Said you sabotaged the company. Guilt twisted in my chest, but Emma's words echoed. They built this on fraud. Week 3, depositions started. Mine first, in TechVision's lawsuit against me. Their attorney, an aggressive woman named Helen Vance, questioned me for 6 hours. When did you decide to steal TechVision's technology? I never stole anything. I developed my own implementation independently. But you had access to company code. Yes, for my job, but I didn't use it for my patent. How can you prove that? I have complete documentation of my development process, all done at home on personal equipment. She tried to trip me up, suggest I'd secretly copied files, claim the similarity between my patent and their product proved theft. But Douglas objected repeatedly, and I stuck to the truth. By the end, she looked frustrated. Week 4, Marcus deposition. I wasn't allowed in the room, but Douglas described it afterward. He tried to play the victim, Douglas said. Claimed he trusted you. You betrayed the company. All that. Then I showed him the email about the House of Cards. What did he say? He tried to claim it was taken out of context. So I asked him what context makes fraud acceptable. He couldn't answer. Then I showed him the fake screenshots they used to fire you. And metadata proves they were created in Photoshop 2 days before your termination meeting. I asked if he knew they were fabricated when he used them to fire you. He invoked the Fifth Amendment, refusing to answer on grounds of self-incrimination. That was as good as an admission. Week 5. Trevor's deposition. Douglas came back energized. He fell apart, tried to act confident, but I systematically destroyed his story. He admitted he never actually had legal review the Project Titan code. He admitted that, under oath. Claimed he assumed it was fine, relied on Marcus to handle it, but we have his email about the House of Cards. When I confronted him with that, he couldn't explain it away. Just kept saying he didn't remember writing it. How bad is it for him? Bad enough that I expect criminal charges within a month. Week 6, settlement discussions began. TechVision's board had placed Trevor on administrative leave. Marcus had already resigned, presumably on advice of counsel. The remaining board members, facing their own liability for inadequate oversight, wanted to end all the lawsuits. Their offer arrived via email. Drop the trade secret lawsuit against me. Pay $350,000 in wrongful termination settlement. Issue a public apology. Acknowledge my patent rights. Douglas brought the offer to me at a coffee shop downtown. I'd been living on contract work I'd picked up, freelance coding projects that paid enough to supplement the milestone money, $350,000, I said, staring at the number. That's life-changing. It's a strong offer. Your salary was $65,000, so this is over 5 years' pay. Plus the public apology matters. It clears your professional reputation. I thought about it. Pay off my $38,000 in student loans completely. Have a massive financial cushion. Start fresh somewhere new. What happens to Trevor and Marcus with this settlement? Nothing directly. This settles your claims against the company. The SEC investigation proceeds separately. That bothered me. They'd tried to commit fraud, tried to destroy me when I got in their way, and they might just walk away with whatever money they'd already taken from the company. I want a criminal referral to the SEC as part of settlement. Douglas shook his head. SEC investigations don't work that way. They proceed independently. We can't condition settlement on criminal prosecution. Then what leverage do we have to ensure they face real consequences? Our lawsuit creates public record. The SEC is already investigating based on information in our filings. Criminal charges are likely regardless of what we do. Likely isn't certain. No, but it's probable. These cases move slowly, but they move. And Dominique, you've already exposed the fraud. The SEC has your documentation. Prosecutors are involved. Justice is happening, just not on your timeline. I stirred my coffee, frustrated. What if I don't settle? What if we go to trial? That's your right. But trial means 2 more years of this consuming your life. It means stress, legal expenses, uncertain outcome. The jury could give you more than $350,000, or they could give you less. And meanwhile, you're unemployed, fighting through discovery, living in legal limbo. He was right. I knew he was right. But something felt incomplete about settling. I need a day to think about it. That night, I called Emma. Take the settlement, she said immediately. Dom, you're not responsible for punishing them. You've done your part. You exposed the fraud, triggered the investigations, protected other people from being defrauded. Now take care of yourself. But they destroyed my career. No, they didn't. You're 29 years old with great skills and more integrity than most people will ever have. Companies will want to hire you because of this, not despite it. You're the engineer who chose ethics over a paycheck. That's valuable. 29. Id turned 29 during week 3, barely noticed with everything else happening. I just want them to pay for what they did. They will. But you don't have to be the one to make it happen. You've carried this burden long enough. The next morning, I told Douglas I'd accept the settlement with one addition. I want TechVision to create a fund for employees who lost their jobs because of this. $100,000. To help them with expenses while they find new positions. Douglas raised his eyebrows. That's unusual, but I can propose it. Any particular reason? Because Sarah and the other engineers didn't do anything wrong. They shouldn't suffer for Trevor and Marcus' fraud. He smiled. You're a good person, Dominique. I'll make it a condition. It took 3 days of negotiation, but TechVision agreed. $100,000 employee assistance fund. My settlement of $750,000, up from the original offer. Full public admission of wrongdoing. Glowing reference letter praising my integrity. And TechVision would pay Douglas attorney fees separately, meaning I kept my full settlement. The day we signed the papers, Douglas called with more news. The SEC just announced charges. Trevor Lawson and Marcus Grant are both indicted. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. Trevor's looking at up to 20 years. Marcus cut a deal. He's cooperating and will plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony. Justice. Finally, real justice. The news hit the papers that afternoon. Tech executives indicted in fraud scheme. My name appeared in the articles, identified as the whistleblower whose evidence triggered the investigation. My phone exploded again. But this time, the messages were different. Sarah. I always knew you were telling the truth. Thank you for having the courage to fight back. From other former colleagues. You saved us from working for criminals. The employee fund is going to help so many people. You're a hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt exhausted, vindicated, relieved, and sad all at once. That evening, Patricia Drummond called. Congratulations on your settlement, and more importantly, congratulations on doing the right thing under enormous pressure. Thank you. For everything. Your support made this possible. I have some news. My firm represents several tech companies in Austin. One of them is hiring for a senior cybersecurity position. They specifically asked if you might be interested. The CEO read about your case and was impressed by your ethics. Really, $95,000 salary, equity package, excellent benefits. They want someone who prioritizes security and integrity over convenience. You'd be perfect. A real job. Better pay. A fresh start with a company that valued the same things I did. Yes. I'm interested. I'll make the introduction tomorrow. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching Austin's skyline light up as the sun set. $750,000 would hit my account next week. Student loans would be paid off. I'd have financial security for the first time in my adult life. But more than the money, I had something else. I'd stood up to fraud. I'd refused to be silenced. I'd fought back when they tried to destroy me. And I'd won. Not perfectly, not without cost. But I'd won. My patent was secure in my name. Trevor and Marcus faced prison. The other employees had support. And I had a future. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. 3 months later, I sat in my new apartment in North Austin. 2 bedrooms, one converted into a home office, natural light streaming through larger windows, a nicer neighborhood where I felt safe walking at night. The student loan portal showed a zero balance. $38,000 paid off completely. The feeling of seeing that zero was almost spiritual. For the first time since college, I owed nothing to anyone. My bank account had a cushion that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. Not rich by any means, but secure, able to handle emergencies without panic, able to save for the future. The new job at CyberShield Solutions was everything I'd hoped. Senior cybersecurity engineer, working on actually innovative projects with a team that valued doing things right. My boss, Catherine Ross, had been explicit during my interview. We read about your case, the courage it took to stand up to your employer, to refuse to be part of fraud. That's exactly the integrity we need on our team. $95,000 salary felt like wealth compared to what I'd been making. Health insurance covered my asthma medication completely. The equity package meant I had ownership stake in something legitimate. The work itself was satisfying in a way Project Titan never had been. We were building security systems for financial institutions. Everything above board, properly licensed, legally sound. When I reviewed code, I didn't find stolen algorithms. When I raised concerns, management listened. My patent had been fully approved by the USPTO. Several companies had expressed interest in licensing. Last week, I'd signed my first deal with a medium-sized healthcare company. $50,000 upfront, ongoing royalties based on usage. The technology ID developed alone in my kitchen was generating income. More than the money, it validated everything. My skills, my approach, my refusal to cut corners. It'd been right. Doing things properly, ethically, from scratch was possible and valuable. Trevor Lawson's trial was scheduled for next spring. Prosecutors had a strong case, built substantially on the evidence I'd provided. His lawyers were negotiating a plea deal, but the government wasn't offering much. He was looking at serious prison time. Marcus Grant had already pleaded guilty. Sentencing next month, probably 3 to 5 years. He'd have to testify against Trevor as part of his deal. His career in tech was over. Brenda Walsh, the HR director, hadn't been criminally charged, but she'd been named in several wrongful termination lawsuits from other employees who came forward after my case. Her career was effectively destroyed, too. The Employee Assistance Fund had helped 23 people. It'd gotten thank you notes from several of them. One particularly touching message came from a single mother who'd worked in quality assurance. The fund had covered her COBRA health insurance and given her a buffer while she found a new job. "You didn't have to fight for us," she wrote. "But you did. You could have just taken care of yourself. Instead, you made sure we were protected too. I'll never forget that." I kept that note on my desk at home, next to a photo of Emma and me from last month when Shed visited to celebrate everything. Sarah and I had coffee regularly now. Shed found a position at another Austin tech company, doing well. We'd rebuilt our friendship, and Shed apologized for not supporting me more publicly during the crisis. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared of losing my job. Scared of being associated with controversy. I'm sorry I didn't stand with you. I understand, you had your own life to protect. But you didn't just protect yourself. You protected all of us, even when we didn't support you." That conversation had meant more than she probably realized. I'd started mentoring junior engineers through a local professional organization. Twice a month, I met with young developers just starting their careers. We talked about technical skills, but also about ethics, about standing up for what's right, about the reality that companies sometimes pressure you to compromise. "What do you do when your boss tells you to ignore a legal problem?" one young woman asked last week. "You document everything. You protect yourself. And you remember that your integrity is worth more than any job." Douglas Brennan and I stayed in touch. Had taken on 2 more whistleblower cases in tech, both inspired by my case. Head told me that my willingness to fight back had encouraged other people to come forward about wrongdoing. You created a ripple effect, he said. People saw that it's possible to stand up to powerful companies and survive. You proved that the system can work if you're brave enough to use it. I'd learned so much through this experience, truths I couldn't have understood without living through it. First, integrity isn't naive. It's strategic. By developing my patent ethically, documenting everything, keeping clean hands throughout, I had an unassailable position when the fight came. If I'd cut corners, stolen their code, done anything questionable, they could have destroyed me. Second, documentation is everything. My meticulous notes, timestamps, evidence, that's what saved me. Without it, the case would have been my word against theirs. In legal battles, evidence matters more than truth. Third, courage is contagious. When I stood up, others found their own courage. 3 other TechVision employees came forward with additional evidence. My case opened the door for them to speak up safely. Fourth, systems work slowly, but they work. The legal process was frustrating, expensive, terrifying, but ultimately, justice prevailed. Patents, courts, regulations, they exist for reasons. They protect people willing to use them properly. Fifth, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. Being fired felt like failure, like shame, like I'd done something wrong, but it wasn't a reflection of my value. It was a reflection of their corruption. Learning to see myself clearly, not through their distorted lens, was crucial. Finally, and maybe most importantly, fighting back doesn't mean you're not scared. I was terrified throughout the entire ordeal, scared of poverty, lawsuits, public judgment, career destruction, but I did it anyway. That's what courage actually is. Not absence of fear, but action despite it. I thought about young engineers starting their careers today, the ones who'd face pressure to compromise, to look the other way, to prioritize convenience over ethics. I wanted them to know something crucial. You have power. Your skills matter. Your ethics matter. Your voice matters. Companies seem monolithic, untouchable, but they're run by people who make mistakes, who sometimes lie, cheat, steal. You don't have to accept it. You can document it. You can protect yourself. You can fight back. You can win. Not always, not easily, not without cost. But it's possible, and even if you lose the specific battle, you keep your integrity. You keep your self-respect. You keep the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and know you did the right thing. That's worth more than any job, more than security or comfort or convenience. It's who you are when everything else is stripped away. I learned that the hardest way possible. Learned it through betrayal, unemployment, legal warfare, public scrutiny, financial terror. But now I know for certain. I can trust myself. I can rely on my own judgment. I can stand up for what's right, even when it costs me. That's the real victory. Everything else, the settlement, the new job, the vindication, those are just details. The real win is knowing I'm someone who won't be complicit in fraud, who won't stay silent when I see wrongdoing, who won't let fear override integrity. I'm someone who fights back, and that's something no one can take away. The patent approval certificate hung on my office wall, next to my diploma from UT Austin. Some nights, I'd look at it and remember sitting at my kitchen table, coding until midnight, terrified but determined. Building something clean and honest while my employer built something fraudulent. That patent represented more than intellectual property. It represented the choice to do things right even when wrong would have been easier. It represented the hundreds of hours I'd invested in my own future when I could have just gone along with their fraud and collected my paycheck. Best choice I ever made. My phone buzzed. Text from Catherine, my new boss. Great work on the security audit today. Exactly the thoroughness we need. Lunch next week to discuss the promotion to lead engineer. Promotion. 6 months into the job, they were already recognizing my work. I replied, absolutely. Thank you. Life wasn't perfect. I still had moments of anxiety. Still worried sometimes about money despite the cushion. Still had nightmares occasionally about being fired, about legal battles, about everything falling apart. But I also had something I'd never had before. Proof that I could survive the worst and come out stronger. Proof that doing the right thing, while costly, was possible and ultimately rewarding. The sunset painted my apartment in shades of gold and orange. I made dinner, something nice instead of ramen. Called Emma to catch up. Reviewed applications for the mentorship program, looking for the next generation of engineers who needed guidance. Tomorrow, I'd go to work at a company that valued integrity. I'd work on projects that were legitimate and meaningful. I'd contribute to something real. But tonight, I just sat on my balcony and felt grateful. Grateful for the fight, for the struggle, for everything that had brought me here. Because fighting back had given me something priceless. It had given me myself. I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for what's right meant risking everything you had? How did you handle it? Did you speak up? Or did you stay quiet? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that integrity matters even when it's costly, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about people who refuse to compromise their values. Share this with someone who needs to hear that fighting back is possible, that courage can win. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're stronger than you think, and that doing the right thing, while never easy, is always worth it.